Did you know that Donkey Kong was the first game to implement the Y-axis in a meaningful way? Otherwise meaning it was the first true platformer. And this single mechanic could be the most important breakthrough in all of gaming, the Y-axis, otherwise known as verticality. If you take a moment to think about it, how many games would you have in your Steam library, your Xbox Game Pass, your KF console, if all the games that implemented verticality just weren't there? You'd probably be hard-pressed to have more than 5 or maybe 10 games that don't have any sort of verticality. But of course, you have to try to make this sort of thing interesting. I mean, what purpose would a Y-axis even serve if you didn't have the means to utilize it in a fun or meaningful way? And that's why I brought you here today, to provide you with what I've learned after hours of research. And I believe I've deduced what makes verticality the single most important thing to have in your game, and more importantly, how platformers mastered this one tool. And what better requirement to start off with other than flexibility, which leads me to the single most referenced game in this video, Spelunky 2. Your platformer has to allow me to do some crazy shit for me to stay awake. Or rather, it has to allow me to do something unique, whether that's with the game engine or how you interact with your enemies. Spelunky 2 does this really well, but more about that in a second. This game is all about your descension into a cave, as you might have guessed by the name Spelunky. And a massive part about your descension is the flexibility you have while descending, and Spelunky offers you a lot of that, long as you're actually conscious. But that's not it, as Spelunky also offers you a ledge grab, ropes you can use to climb back up, even buddy hopping. And did I mention it also offers tons of items to play around with? 52 in fact, many of which focusing on that said flexibility, and many of which can also be used to abuse their abilities to death. I mean, just take a passing glance at the plasma cannon, which allows you to destroy everything in your path, and it has no limit on how many times it can fire. Or maybe take a look at the teleporter, allowing you to, of course, teleport, allowing for so much movement in the Y or even X axis. Now do me a favor here and imagine if there was a world where you had very little control while also somehow managing to feel hellishly rewarding like that of Spelunky 2. Well, I invite you to the hell that is getting over it. As you 2017 brothers might know, this is a game where you're confined to a cauldron, and all you have to move around is a hammer. But this doesn't mean you can't do some crazy shit. This game utilizes momentum a lot with its unintuitive controls, mostly revolving around pogoing with your hammer, swinging like Tarzan with your hammer, or pushing tangerines. The point is, it doesn't have to be over the top to allow something that has a lot of flexibility, but rather the tools you're equipped with to allow that flexibility. And this is probably one of the most important parts of a meaningful Y-axis, as without this, you really just can't do anything fun. I mean, think about a world where you have just your head and the wheel hasn't been invented. You literally couldn't move anywhere. The point is, without these tools you're typically equipped with, i.e. your legs, arms, wheelchair, whatever, it'd be a lot harder to do anything, if anything at all. But let's dial this back a bit. It isn't just one way or the other. There is an in-between, and I'd like to take a look at another game to demonstrate this. That being Celeste, which is probably what you clicked on this video for. If you're unaware, Celeste is a game about a girl climbing a mountain, and she traverses this mountain by using the tools she's equipped with. And her kit really isn't even that insane. I mean, to bring it down to the bare bones of it, she really just has a jump, wall grab, and a dash. But that's all the tools that she needs to traverse this mountain. In this game, you can be popped into a room and think, this has to be impossible, but only after many attempts will you probably realize how to complete the room, which typically consists of using your entire kit. That of course, however, isn't the entirety of this concept. There's yet another game that utilizes this tools idea, that being Carlson. This game is in a very similar vein to that of Ultra Kill, or mayhaps even Neon White, that being shown by the many tools you're equipped with. But of course, I'd like to take a look at the ones that boost your movement on a vertical level. And there's one tool here that really stands out to me, that being your grapple hook. This weapon really utilizes the Y-axis to its fullest ability. I mean, take a look at this level here. I could fight this guy and possibly die, or I could literally just avoid the entire level by grappling around it. It's so flexible. You also have an equivalent of a rocket launcher in your arsenal, which is a little more constricting, but I would be lying if I didn't say it was really goddamn fun to mess around with. I mean, you can literally send yourself up into the stratosphere with this, but I digress. By now, you should really understand how flexibility and tools help immensely. Despite this, it's when you add precision to the mix of flexibility and tools that you start to cook up something really fun, punishing, and challenging all at the same time. I mean, I've already told you how getting over it influences precision with its punishment for misprecision, but what if we looked at a game with a little more intuity in its controls? That being Celeste. This game, of course, utilizes precision with the tools you have at your disposal. I mean, I've already told you about her kit being really rewarding, but there's one abstract thing I left out, that being your complete control over Madeline. This might seem very niche at the start, but the game absolutely pushes this to its limits in the form of precision. I mean, in one of the last levels, the Chapter 8 Seaside, if you mess up a single input, you're practically done for. But what makes this so important at the end of the day? Well, if you lack precision, then your game will become more frustrating than fun, or more stressful than relaxing. This can be easily seen in a game like Getting Over It. Even if you've never played the game, look up Markiplier Falls from the very end of Getting Over It and see how low precision can destroy a man's career. And to be clear, this precision is less about your ability to be precise and rather the game's ability to accurately reflect the movement you expect. This is partly what makes things like ice physics in games so frustrating. It takes away that control you have, making whatever your job might be more often than not more frustrating. And if something such as this takes away your control, deaths in games begin to feel less like your fault and more like the game engine's fault. That's about where precision ends though, but where the last requirement starts: the importance of the X-axis implementation, and more importantly, implementation of obstacles. An X-axis should be obvious to implement within your game, right? I mean, as I've said before, one is practically non-existent without the other. Well, of course it's obvious to implement, but it's not obvious on how to implement the X-axis well. Let's take it back a bit to find out whatever the hell I'm talking about. If you recall, I said a few things along the lines of, you need to give me control of what's going on in the Y-axis. And that didn't mean that I want to control my height up and down, but I also want to have the ability to control my character left and right. But why would I have to feel the need to do this? Well, a platformer isn't really a true platformer without obstacles, and the obstacles are really what make the horizontality work. Think back to all the platformers I've mentioned so far. Spelunky, Celeste, Getting Over It, Carlson. All of these games have obstacles in common. Spelunky with its countless enemies, Celeste with its spikes, Carlson with its enemies, and Getting Over It in the form of the gaps you have to cross. And how do you get past all these obstacles? You utilize the Y-axis in conjunction with the X. I mean, do I even have to explain the concept of stomping Koopas in Mario games? And this is applied in so many games. But how do you make this work? Well, you have to give me the means to traverse both the X and Y, represented by the tools. You also have to give me the control, represented by flexibility. And lastly, you have to give me precision. Slow down though, as if you give me too much control, you negate the need for any of the tools. Or if you spoon feed me precision, I lack the need for any control. Think of it as something of a rock, paper, scissors map. This directly affects that, and that affects this. So, now we have all of our requirements nestled into this video. But what does that mean when we put it all together? Well, what I personally take from this is the fact that verticality is a very fragile thing in all of gaming. I mean, if you just take a closer look at Spelunky, it doesn't take a genius to figure out how masterfully put together all these things were. Regardless, verticality is necessary to make your platformer work, and even more necessary to have your platformer master that art. One more thing before I head out though. Did you know that the average Doggy Dude viewer does not exist? That being said, it'd be helpful if you, the one who enjoyed the video to the very end, subscribed so you could be a normal viewer. It'd also be helpful if you hit that silly little bell next to that button, and if it tickles your fancy, please recommend this to other people. It'd be very appreciated. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.